Hi, Edgewater. This is Lilly Steirer. I'm with the Sustainability Board in Edgewater, and I am going to ask Jason Bump, also on the Sustainability Board, about planting seedlings and getting seeds started inside. So hi, Jason.
Hi, Lily.
So my first question for you is, we're close to the end of April now. Can we still start seeds indoors?
Yeah, you can, of course. We started a long time ago, basically when the pandemic started, but you basically can start seeds all the way up until the last frost, which is technically the middle of May. A lot of people like to start like tomatoes around this time versus how we have. We started tomatoes about 6 weeks ago. And why people like to start them a little bit later is because soon I will have, this is a tomato plant that we have, which is a rather large tomato. In a couple weeks, it will probably be another foot. So when it comes into planting space, you can quickly run out of space. I'll show a tour here in a little bit, but in my little small, maybe what is it, 10 by 20, I have over 300 plants, and it's getting a little stuffy.
I can't imagine. So what are the best seeds to start indoors versus sprinkling outside on the ground? Obviously, you just showed us a tomato. We know tomatoes are best to start indoors, but should I start all of my seeds indoors?
Well, cool weather crops, you can be starting outside. Like we've done our peas. We typically do peas around St. Patty's Day. That's somewhere around 45 days before the last frost. And then you can actually do those cold weather ones on the back end too. So 45 days before the first frost.
So in the fall.
In the fall. Usually on cold weather crops, we can do two seedings here. You have 2 seasons. But generally, most people do all the Mediterranean stuff like peppers and tomatoes. Squashes tend to like to be planted outside, though we actually are trying some loofah sponges and that kind of stuff. There are some workarounds to plants that don't really like to be planted. You can get actually potting jars. They kind of look similar to this, but they're made out of like horse manure. So when you plant the plant, you start them inside, they basically get planted with the container. So
very cool.
There's more than one way to skin a cat when you're planting stuff. But,
yes.
But in general, it's all the hot weather plants that you want to be focusing on right now. But, you really can do almost anything pre-season. So.
Yeah, I think for me, as a general rule, I tell people to avoid planting roots as seedlings. Like I know that you as you said, like you can do it, sure. But they're not always super happy about the transplant. Right. So that's, but I'm with you. Warm weather, super important.
I mean, garlic and onions and carrots, of course, you would never start inside. I guess
I've seen people do it.
Yes, and I was going to get to that because we will be talking about container gardens. And so I have seen, like I said, there's more than one way to do this kind of stuff. Right. But I have seen people plant, carrots in 5-gallon buckets. So
right, which is very different than little tiny seed pots. But yes, I'm with you, and that'll be our next video is container gardening. So just really quick before we for the warm weather, when is the best time in Edgewater specifically to then transplant these warm weather crops into the ground?
I'm sorry, oh no, your connection broke up.
I think we're back.
Okay.
Do you hear me? Yeah, you were very frozen. I was like, wow, he's really thinking about my question.
Well, it's funny because
I'll repeat the question just really quick. I'm not sure if you heard it, but when is the best time to transplant warm weather crops from and I feel like I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but from these seedling points that you have a nice, beautiful plant, when do you plant them into the ground? Outside. Timing in Edgewater.
Well, so you usually have two steps. Right now, these are like seedlings, and these will actually grow until they get their first seed, and that or first true leaves, which basically I'm trying to find a good one that will show that. Here's a pepper. Once you get your second set of leaves, they'll need to be up planted. So a week ago, we up planted about 250 plants. And so once they get up planted, to the original question, you want to plant after the last frost, which is typically in Colorado in our growing zone around Mother's Day or the middle of May. So we kind of hold off, and so we have a unique planting situation. We have a grow house or a greenhouse, a hoop house, and some garden beds. So I will be planting around that time, but most of those are going to be covered. When I get into the great outdoors, it is probably that next weekend after Mother's Day. If you've been here long enough, you know that we can get snow on Mother's Day. So
yes, I think last year it was even like May 18th or something. It was pretty darn late. And I know some gardeners do Memorial Day even, which is like the 20th or something. So yeah.
And I'm born and raised here, and so I know the drill. Basically, yeah. I have ways to cover my crops. I have stuff. I'm well aware of all that. So there is a little gambling there. So yeah, you're probably right on the safe side. If we're really talking about first time gardeners, yeah, you might want to hold off a little bit later. But you know, if you read the books, that's what they say in the books is after the frost. So
yeah, it's just determining the frost in Denver or in Edgewater is tricky. Tricky business. Okay, can we get a tour of your seedling operation that you have going?
Sure. So we do a bunch of stuff here. Let me see if I can walk. There you go. That's basically the nut and hardware of it. It's a really small space. The key to that operation is that shelving unit that has T5 lights on it, and the lights, I don't know if you can see, are all on chains so that we can, once they get out of the germination, I'll have to show you not showing you quite in order, but you want to try to keep your lights only a couple inches off of your plants. It keeps them from getting spindly. But for space size, what you want to do, what we've had to do is started our germination. Sorry, it's underneath the table here. But in those trays, here, let me pull one out. So what I want to show you, though, is that they're on heating pads. That's an important thing. I put them on the ground so the heat will actually rise. But let me pull out one of those. Like I said, I'm in the middle of a lot of plants right now. Okay. So this, I think, is Debbie's experiment for squash. And so what this is I don't know if you can see it, but it's a tray that's got a lid on it. And you can see with all that moisture, that's the main reason why you're doing that, is to keep moisture in and heat in there. Usually we grow and start in these kind of things that have cells in them. And this is about the time we pull them. So these were just pulled the other day. I was talking to someone online that actually this morning, she was saying she waits until her sprouts hit the top of the plastic. I guess that's technically, you could wait till that. We feel like that's a little cutting it close.
I feel like that could risk it getting spindly.
Yeah,
because they're
kind of
getting
how
pretty
we feel.
desperate for light.
Yeah, and that's kind of my deal too. I wasn't really going to argue with her about it. But,
No. And as you said earlier, like there are a lot of different ways and different approaches to gardening. And I think one of the things I've learned myself is they're not all wrong. Like if you choose not to do it as a gardener, it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong, but it's good to explore the possibilities.
Exactly. And we were a market gardener for a couple years, meaning that we actually sold produce. So we have a lot of plastic stuff that we've been holding on to. Something that we've been wanting to do is, let me grab these. These are called soil blocks. And
yeah.
Basically, it's a way to escape your use of plastic. And we will eventually get to that. But what you do with these is you pack these down on soil. It will have to be a damp soil. And then they go into a wooden tray. So it's similar to this plastic scenario. And then once those start and get to their second, they get actually transferred to a bigger one. So you'll make bigger trays, bigger cubes. And, this does look rather small. I mean, that's a lot of seeds, but in germination rates, not all of your seeds come up. So this would be the time that you would actually go through and use your, best practice is use your strongest plants and then transfer them over to here. You still probably would use that plastic cover.
Sure.
I think how we've been talking about doing it is, I don't know if you can see these, even on these.
Drop us
these
down.
are actually, trays have a bottom tray that holds water.
Okay.
This water, and so we would just do them in those and use the plastic trays.
So Jason, can I ask you, if you've never planted, started seeds indoors, what are just the absolute basic, minimal amount of, fuss and requirements
so the biggest
to get started?
The biggest thing is that you need seed starting soil. So that soil is basically inert. I was talking to Debbie about this earlier today. We buy it. You can actually microwave soil. Right? We don't own a microwave, so that is part of the reason why we don't do that. But you basically want to kill all pathogens and bacteria in the soil. All the nutrients and everything for that seed to start is actually in the seed. So basically you need a sterile soil. I did see online people have been using these and berry like berry boxes. So basically putting your soil in here, the berry ones work a little bit better because they already have holes in the bottom, but you'll have to put some holes in the bottom. And then what's nice about them is the lid. So it's temperature, water, and soil basically is what you need to start a plant.
Where do you like to buy your soil, the seedling soil?
We like Southwest Floral, which is on like 41st and Harlan.
Super close to Edgewater. That's great.
Yeah, that's probably the closest one. Eckerd's is my, everyone goes to Eckerd's. I think that's probably where Debbie gets we bought a big bag, and basically out of that one bag, we've done everything this season. So,
wonderful.
That's well over 300 plants. I think we were saying we're at like 375.
Oh my gosh.
So we still have a little bit more. And we do it all inside. Yeah, there's a couple We've taken on a couple projects, smaller projects, and they're requiring special plants. So
Okay.
it's
Um,
something we really
so
like to do.
so sterile soil coming from a nursery, I think is the key here.
It's the best way to do it.
And I agree. I've bought mine from Ector's as well. And I think Southwest Floral's a great idea. And then, so starting in what kind of, so you gave one nice example of using those lettuce and berry containers. What other container possibilities for getting started?
Well, you can, I'll show you one thing that we have done. We saved these from the trash this year, and you can actually start seeds in them. It's basically a solo cup. We used it to upplant tomato plants in them.
Okay.
And so what you could do is actually put a piece of cellophane over the top, start in there, and keep the whole plant in there.
Okay.
Anything that's food safe is the best way to do it. If you hold on one more second, I'll show you. No, I thought I had another one. I don't. I was going to show you what a seed tray looks like.
Right.
Let me show you this. I think, a lot of these can be saved from stuff, and a lot of our 6-packs are saved that way.
Right.
These come in all different sizes. I think these are 72s, and they have one actually smaller than that.
Nice.
That's what we do because we know how much will fit on our shelves, right?
Nice.
Cheapest way is, like I was saying, any kind of food safe. So you could collect yogurt containers. I've seen people do seed starts with making little cups out of newspaper.
Right.
Those will stay for a full, this whole process until you put them in the ground. It's another like trick you could do if you needed to if you wanted to start squash inside, because you can't plant those with the container in it.
Yeah, the newspaper will decompose.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great technique. So let's just do a quick review and we'll wrap up. But I mean, the basics for plants you need are starting with this sterile soil, and then about how wet do you get it, and just talk a little bit about that.
You just want it damp. You don't want it wringing wet. I mean, I guess it's similar to composting. It's like a wrung out sponge. With all plants, I think the most important thing with growing plants is all about observing it, actually watching them. Yellowing tends to be too much light or not enough light. You can, one thing to watch out when you're doing it, is when you get a fungus, and I actually have a book over here. It's basically dampening off. And whenever you see that, it's a good illustration here. I don't know if, yeah.
You can see it.
Yeah, so dampening off is one of the biggest things you want to look for plants. And basically what it is too much water. And it's a fungus that could wipe, like if we had that, we would destroy that plant and take it out of here as soon as possible, because it could actually contaminate this whole grow. That was one thing I wanted to share with you, is that I know we're getting towards the end, but a couple books.
Wonderful.
This one is one that Debbie really likes. What's nice about it is it has a week by week, and you can actually follow with it. So you figure out when your first frost or last frost, sorry, and then you can go day by day on what you should plant. It's a really good one. It has a lot of information in it. And then one more. I've got a huge library, but
yeah.
uh, Elliot Coleman has a bunch of great books, but out of all his books for first-time gardeners, this one is probably the best one. He's kind of old school, but this is Four Seasons Farm Gardening Cookbook. So what's really nice about this is it tells you the whole, everything we talked about and more, but also like how to cook stuff. So
fun.
that's kind of how I got into most of this stuff, was the food part. So
right, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Do you have any final words of encouragement for folks as they consider starting their own seeds inside?
Well, I get a lot of like, we talked about a bunch of stuff like spindly plants and all that. And I really believe that, it's not a failure if your plants get spindly. I tell people right off the bat when they have a problem, replant, and not throw away your plant, but use that as an opportunity to observe the two plants. Like I said, the observation is the best way to learn about plants. It can't, there's so much that goes on that factors into it, from soil to sunlight to temperature to all that you can't really just follow a one recipe that fits all kind of scenario. Especially like in Colorado, because we're such a unique growing environment. So get started and start learning.
I love that. Well, and I think we have a lot of, some of us have some extra time. I don't feel like I necessarily have extra time, but I'm closer to home, and that gives a lot more opportunity to watch my garden. But I wholeheartely agree. Just keep your eyes on your plants, and they are the teachers.
Right, exactly.
All right, well, our next video is going to be about container gardening. So if you have any questions, again, reach out to us. lsteirer@edgewaterco.com, or Jason is jasonbump@edgewaterco.com. Thank you so much. Oh, do you have one more thing?
Oh, it's jbump.
What did I say? Jason Bump?
Jason Bump. Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
All right. That's who I am. So.
Yeah, that is who you are, Jason. Thank you. So jbump@edgewaterco.com, and I'm glad you were listening, even though I was, yeah. All right. Thank you so much.